So I just got back from seeing Fantastic Four First Steps in theaters. I was really anticipated for it, but at the same time, I was also pretty anxious, if you will.
Gorgeous. I think that's my favorite image so far.
Just our hands.
Yeah. As long
That
as
was
you
our
don't
very
have to see,
first day
as long
as
as you
well.
don't have to.
If you know, you know. But at the end of the day, I am actually sad to say that this movie was very solid, but it was this close to being phenomenal, okay? The first 2 acts of this movie are some of the best Marvel or superhero content in general that I have seen in years at this point. However, a massive issue arrives later on in the movie, and it's just unfortunate that it happened the way that it did, and we're gonna break it down. So without further ado, let's get into the review for Fantastic Four First Steps. First off, we're just gonna jump right into this, take the first step, if you will, and talk about what I liked about the movie, because I mentioned there is an issue later on, but overall, I thought this movie was very solid, okay? There was multiple good things I liked about it. First off, the first 2 acts were genuinely great. The first 2 acts, I'd say, are some of the greatest MCU/DC anything content superhero genre that we've had in years, man. It felt like there was drama, there's multiple great dramatic sequences we'll talk about in a second, but there was actually stakes. This actually felt important. There felt like there was a dire need for saving, in this movie, obviously from the Fantastic Four. The storyline I thought was good. They gave a nice nuanced spin on a classic take like the family narrative. We've seen the family storyline kind of play out in movies like Shazam, kind of in Blue Beetle as well, which I'm sure not many of you have seen either of those DC disaster flops, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. We obviously remember it with The Incredibles, obviously, but here they give a nuanced approach and add elements of selflessness and what it means when you add new dynamics in, people getting intellectually challenged with their heroism on a worldwide scale. Things like that gave this basic narrative a lot more nuance and made it better than just being a basic family narrative. And there's an actual attempt at giving depth to these characters and to this storyline, unlike in Superman, where you basically just get no plot, no story, and one-dimensional characters. And it was shocking to see that they tried to give effort and, give depth to these characters, because Marvel has given us so much garbage the last 2 or 3 years. I want that to be clear. Marvel has not been giving us like average or decent. No, it's been horrible for years now. You maybe have a few movies here and there that have been decent, but for the last 4 or 5 years, it's been straight cheeks. Now, obviously, the visuals in this movie were absolutely amazing. I love the way that they acclimate you into this new lived-in world. It's just so brilliant the way they do it. We see the people's connection with the Fantastic Four and how the Fantastic Four became heroes in their world and accepted as heroes. It's very great. The opening movie, the opening parts, it just jumps right into the action. You learn the story, you get the backstory, and you get to see the characters, their dynamics with one another, and I thought that was a great way to start the movie, and very entertaining. And something that was very brilliant about this movie, and I'm going to compare this to Superman because there are obviously 2 big superhero movies in the summer, and there's some of the elements are kind of similar in the comic bookiness of it all. Superman just kind of jumped you right into the action, and you never really got time to sit with characters and develop with them and get acclimated to this lived-in universe. But in Fantastic Four, you get acclimated to this lived-in universe, man. The way they do it with the opening 15-20 minutes of the movie, the score and soundtrack in this movie are brilliant, by the way, okay? Fantastic Four! You know what I'm saying? I thought that was great. They could have used it more in the 3rd act, but it is what it is. The way they acclimate you into this lived-in world, you get to see their connections with the people. They do a beautiful sequence in the opening 15 minutes where it's like action. It's a mixture of, expository dialogue, some backstory, cool editing, creative shots, and creative action to help get the point across. I thought that was a great moment, It actually showed that Matt Shakman, the director of the movie, actually had a vision, unlike a lot of recent MCU movies where it's just directed by committee, it feels, is what a lot of people say. That's exactly how I describe it as well. It's just directed by committee. Bunch of bad CGI and green screen, no real effort, no real creativity or unique, artistry added to the movie. This guy, Matt Shakman, also made WandaVision, so it makes sense he's got some of that, uniqueness carrying over. And shockingly enough, like I mentioned with the MCU being so awful the last few years, the tone in this movie is actually very balanced. You get your MCU jokes here and there, but for the most part, besides 1 or 2 moments, or maybe even more than that, you know what I'm saying? The tone is very balanced. You get those dire stakes of feeling like you need saving, and you also get those moments of levity here and there. You get some emotional pull. You actually get some expository dialogue that explains why things are happening sometimes. But in a lot of other cases, the actors' performances are actually really good in certain moments where they can convey these emotions across to you. So the tone was balanced, and it kept the movie nice and balanced just in terms of the pacing of it as well. The scenes flowed, the movie flowed as well. You weren't like actually bored for like large large portions of this movie, things move together pretty nicely, in my opinion, from the tone perspective and the pacing perspective. And now on to the meat and potatoes of everything that I really liked were the characters, okay? All of the characters here, the Fantastic Four characters specifically, I will say. Mole Man is kind of a side character here. He's pretty funny, and he does his job. He's decent in his role. But really, it's about the Fantastic Four and all four of these characters. Because Shala Ball and Galactus, okay, they had a couple decent scenes, really cool stuff they did, but their storylines and the way they were characterized in the third act and just throughout the movie, for Shala Ball's case at least, you know, so like I said, balls, but you get the point, okay? Shala Ball's storyline was not very great, in my opinion, okay? But we're going to get to that later. All the Fantastic Four characters themselves did a solid job. I'm going to start off with who I was most nervous about going into this movie, which was actually Joseph Quinn. I know a lot of people are nervous about Pedro Pascalio, you know what I'm saying? My boy Pedro Pascal. I don't know why I'm saying he's my boy. He's not my boy, you know what I'm saying? But still, Pedro Pascal ended up doing good here. Joseph Quinn did a really good job as Johnny Storm. You see his arc of kind of gaining maturity, you know, and actually getting along more with Reed. Not getting along more in a sense, but really learning more about himself as the movie goes on through interactions with characters like Reed and like his sister and like Ben. And he also brings some of that classic, you know, Johnny Storm charm that the character is supposed to have with it. He has some funny moments as well, which are nice when he's talking about what's happening with Shala Balls inside of the movie. So that was pretty cool as well. Then I'm going to talk about Pedro Pascal. He did a great job in this movie, in my opinion. I thought he did a great job of conveying the burden of knowledge because, as you guys know, one of the storylines in the comics, really just in general about Reed Richards, is the simple fact that he has to carry the burden of being the smartest man on the planet. So he acts sometimes out of fear, sometimes he doesn't act out of fear, you know, to be cautious and stuff like that. And because of that, it adds a bunch of different layers and complexities to this character. And that really makes this iteration of Reed Richards in live action, I think, a bit more deep than other versions of Reed Richards we've gotten in live action, especially the one in Multiverse of Madness that got turned into spaghetti noodles in 3 seconds. Okay, but that's the situation with that. Reed has layers and he's learning selflessness just like Johnny, just like Sue, and just like Thing. Thing, I think, like could have been used a little bit more, but again, you know, he had his good moments throughout the movie. He showed some humanity with that relationship with the school teacher girl, and then obviously Sue Storm, played by Vanessa Kirby, she was very good inside of this movie. I love the speech she gave to the city and how she was actually willing to, you know, to uplift people and show that family is fighting for something larger than yourself. You're fighting for sacrifice. You're fighting for others. And that's what brings the essence of heroism to this specific group of the Fantastic Four. I'm telling you, bro, the storyline and the depth that I saw in this movie was shockingly good. Like, Marvel has not written characters, and this isn't even like the deepest of writing you can get, but it's deep enough to the point where you notice, wow, this is good. You know, this is much better than the stuff we normally get. So the performances across the board were solid, and obviously part of the movie being this dire and having actual stakes means like those themes of, you know, selflessness, you know, and the intellectual challenges. Like, you see Johnny go through multiple intellectual challenges, it feels like, in this movie, but throughout it, he gets smarter, he matures, he listens, and he actually is able to use that listening to end up saving the world later because, you know, he's actually responsible for Shala Ball realizing the error of her ways and coming back down to Earth and actually helping the Fantastic Four in the final fight scene, which was underutilized the whole movie, but we're not going to talk about that yet, okay? So all of that stuff works together to make a story that I thought was deeper than your average superhero movie and actually was executed very well in most parts of the film. And other things I thought were great was that Shala Balls, you know, as much as I thought that she had some really, underdeveloped storyline dynamics and the fact that she was barely in the movie at all, okay? Obviously, she had multiple good scenes. I'm not going to sit here and act like she didn't. Some of the action she was involved in, the aesthetic of her character, the look of her character, I thought was brilliant. It had a very, very visceral look in the action scenes. It looked really cool, and I thought that was really nice. Obviously, Galactus as well, visually, he looks amazing. When his eyes open up for the first time when they visit him on the ship, you know what I'm saying? Your boy got goosebumps. I got them rock goosebumps, you know, slapping my arm. That scene was epic. At that moment, I genuinely, like, audibly went like, wow, you know, that was a really cool moment when that took place, okay? And even more positives were that the action and the visuals in this movie were very, very good and even great in a lot of different scenes. The CGI had a couple moments where it looked pretty shoddy, but overall the CGI was good. The visuals were great. There was creativity. It felt like the director making this, Matt Shackman, actually had a vision. I know he made WandaVision, so he's got some creativity and some uniqueness to, you know, his different color palettes and the way he edits, and I thought that was really good. The action here I thought was creative. The chase sequence, man, there are some really good sequences. We're going to cover a couple of these real quick. Number one, the sequence where they're actually, you know, where Sue Storm is, you know, having a forced pregnancy, obviously, because Galactus is manipulating, you know what I'm saying, matter and stuff like that, and, you know, forcing the baby to basically come out earlier. That scene happening while they're trying to run away from Galactus and Shala Balls, I thought that was brilliant, bro. absolutely brilliant. There was drama, there was suspense, there was sci-fi technology. Like, it felt like some stuff from a really high-quality sci-fi film, so that was good. The sequence where Johnny uses, Shia LaBeouf's language in order to actually understand her, and relate to her and give her some character, I thought that sequence was great. Sue Storm having her speech in front of the city, like I said earlier, was really good. And then obviously the action sequence in the beginning of the third act where Reed is like jumping from, building to building and using that, that stick to kind of, rotate Galactus's gears out of alignment so his mechanics get messed up a little bit. I thought that was really good. And there's a few other scenes like that I've touched on. Shia LaBeouf's flying sequences as well were really good, like I said. Obviously, one of the things with Galactus, like the first time you see him, I thought was really good. And overall, the power set for each individual looks solid. I do wish that we saw a little bit more of the Thing's power set, and I do wish that we saw a little bit more of Reed stretching, but we saw enough of it, I guess. It was, for an hour and 50 movie, they showed you enough. I'll give him that. And so overall, you've seen, we're 10 minutes into the video, dang near 10 or 11 minutes, however long it's been, and I've only listed positives for the most part besides a few things. Then that's because up until a little bit after the beginning of the third act, this movie was genuinely great. And that's why I say, even though I'm about to get into the flaws and the negatives for this movie, this is an overall win for Marvel, because number one, they have not had a set of 2/3 of a movie be as good as this 2/3 of this movie was in a long time. And so because of that, we now have to pay respect where respect is due. I respect you, love you, you know what I'm saying? However, we now have to get into the issues. Number one, the third act of this movie, in my opinion, is a disaster in many aspects. We first have to talk about Galactus. Number one, I think Galactus should have been bigger in terms of his physical build, but we're not even going to talk about that. We have to really discuss the power scam that takes place. We see Galactus throughout this movie as manipulating matter, like he forced Sue Storm's pregnancy, to just happen immediately, right? He obviously made different decisions where he was like moving things to him and moving things away from him, just manipulating matter. He's obviously imposing, so he has great durability, great strength. He eats worlds. He's been doing it for billions of years. And that reality, combined with the fact that in the third act, he arrives down. We see his ship earlier on in the movie is able to conjure up objects in a straight line. You guys know, if you saw the movie, you know what I'm talking about. The ship conjures up things in a straight line and brings it directly to Galactus on his throne. And in this third act, he comes down from the ship and doesn't decide to use the ship's abilities to just bring Franklin Richards up to him. It is the dumbest thing ever how they make Galactus look so stupid and so weak. How is Sue Storm, who just got out of a car crash in the movie, she gets out and immediately uses all of her powers? And listen, Sue Storm is strong in the comics. I understand that she's powerful. She has a great power set. I understand that. But moving Galactus back physically thousands of feet into a black hole is absolutely egregious to me, okay? It's just ridiculous. Galactus is one of the most powerful characters in the history of fiction, and you've shown in this movie how he can manipulate matter. He then decides to be dumb and then get outpowered by Sue Storm. Like, what? We have to do better than this. Galactus getting utilized just to get beat up by Invisible Woman, bro. Come on, man. We have to do better. That whole thing made the third act so dumb and so pointless because it contradicts everything we saw from Galactus earlier in the movie and even what we saw from Shia LaBeouf to an extent. And speaking of Shia LaBeouf gets like a 2-minute backstory sequence when she's talking to Johnny, I'm pretty sure. And that's great. That would have been good if she was actually utilized in the movie because she's barely featured in this movie, bro. She may be in for maybe 3 minutes out of the hour and 50 runtime, and so because of her getting that little expository 2-minute backstory sequence, it doesn't matter because she's barely in the movie, so who cares? I just thought that was very stupid and very unfortunate, man. Like, I wanted more from her, but she was barely in the movie, so her story and her depth doesn't really get to be explored that much. You get a 2-minute sequence, and that's like the majority of her moments in the movie. So other than that, she's just doing action. So it's like, man, I think she could have been much better, and I think that Galactus should have been much better and much smarter. We showed how smart he was before. We showed his power set, and then we just go back on it and make him look stupid. And that just means that the third act was clearly rushed, right? You have some certain shots in the act are very bad CGI. Johnny's making a couple misplaced jokes, in my opinion. And then Galactus is taking a handful of the ground and sniffing dirt. It's like, what are we doing, man? I thought the characterization in this act and some of the stuff that took place was pretty stupid. What I think should have happened, and because this was the original leak and we didn't get in the movie, this also added into the issue. The original leaks for this movie I heard, months ago, way months ago, around the time of the first trailer, was that Galactus was going to be so powerful to the point where he literally had to make the Fantastic Four flee the universe because it got destroyed, but at least the Fantastic Four would get away with Franklin Richards. You get what I'm saying? But then they would have to carry the burden and the guilt of letting an entire planet die on their watch. That could set up a bunch of with great emotional and, nuanced storytelling inside of Doomsday and Secret Wars for the Fantastic Four for this group, but instead, they just have Galactus get pushed into a black hole, and now he's millions of light years away from their universe. So where does Galactus even go from here? Like, that's what I'm saying. As big and as important of a character as he is, the fact that this is what we got was very underwhelming. And something else I thought about as well is that for the final battle, the way that they had Galactus get beat, there's also another way you could have done it different from the way the leak said that it was going to originally go, which would have been better than the movie. But I think this way would have been better too. Like when Reed was messing with Galactus's gears and kind of, messing it up, and it was malfunctioning or whatever. As it was malfunctioning, maybe then Galactus could have actually used his brain and used his ship to try and just go ahead and capture Franklin. So he's like chasing Johnny throughout the city using the ship is chasing him, and then Silver Surfer shows up to derail the ship or something like that, something of that nature. And then obviously as Galactus is falling back on his last legs, he just calls down a bunch of fire, kind of like Thanos did in Endgame when he was getting swarmed by Wanda and all the Avengers and stuff like that. I think that would have been good. And then in the last ditch effort to push Galactus over the edge to get him into the black hole portal, then Sue Storm could have used all of her might and all of her power to push him in, and then Silver Surfer could have hit the last blow to push him in the portal for good. That would have been much better, and it would have had everyone in the team actually being utilized. Even Thing could have been, maybe trying his hardest, to move his foot or some stuff, but that would have been much better and much smarter, because you're actually counteracting an intelligent villain who's utilizing his immense power set, rather than just having him being pushed into a portal. I thought that was stupid. And along with that, I do think the movie does suffer partially from the runtime, okay? Now, I do think that they are able to flesh out a lot of different story dynamics and character moments inside of this movie, but if you add an extra 15-20 minutes to this movie, which they easily could have done, the movie's pacing was great, it was flowing great, the movie was around an hour and 50, if you exclude the credits, it's about an hour and 40. If you made that movie like 2 hours base, and then the credits were like 10 to 15 extra minutes, that would have been much better, because you would have had more time to sit with the characters like Ben Grimm, you know what I'm saying, like Human Torch, like Sue Storm, like Reed Richards. Obviously with Shala Ball, you could have given her more screen time. Even Galactus could have gotten some extra stuff to do. Even Mole Man could have had extra stuff to do. And it looks like in the trailer, you see certain shots that were in the trailer that weren't in the movie. So there was a bunch of deleted scenes and cut scenes from the movie probably. It would have been nice to see more of that, because I feel like it would have fleshed out different dynamics and moments in the story. And it would have given us even more moments in this lived-in world, helping us relate to the universe and helping us relate to the characters. However, they already did a very good job of doing that. So, I can't complain too much about it. And obviously, the post-credit scene inside of this movie is embarrassing. Doctor Doom, we're supposed to be excited to see RDJ's Doctor Doom, to see this version of the character, to build hype, to build stakes, to build storylines. But instead of getting any of that, we get some random Party City outfit Doctor Doom with a mask that looks like it can't even fit a human face. The fabrics on the suit look fake and very cheap. And let me tell you something right now. That is not Robert Downey Jr. in that suit. That's probably a stand-in. That ain't RDJ. Well, it might be RDJ as in Ronald Donald Jr., but it is not Robert Downey Jr. I don't know who the heck that was in the costume. And why would Franklin Richards just randomly, lets the Doctor Doom just walk up to him like that? It's very weird. It's out of character, and I thought it was stupid and rushed. And that's how the third act in the post-credit scene felt. It didn't build any more hype for Doomsday. And what is the point of the Thunderbolts post-credit scene where we literally got to see the Fantastic Four ship heading to the MCU? Where is that from? What does that mean? We don't know, and it looks very disconnected if you just watch the movies in succession. So overall, it was pretty ridiculous. The third act and the post-credit scene combined were bad in many aspects, and it brought the movie down a good bit. But overall, because the first two acts are so great, because there's so many amazing moments, because there's actually improvement upon the product of Marvel and just superhero content in general that I've been consuming from Marvel and DC over the last however many years, I would say the first two acts of this movie are genuinely some of the best stuff I've seen, but probably since the No Way Home. I really like the Flash movie. I thought that had some great stuff, and then obviously the Snyder Cut has been the best post-COVID superhero movie that I've ever seen, and it just is what it is. It's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time because it was that amazing. However, this movie's first two acts had amazing moments in it. It was very well made, and it was very good, and the characterization, the storylines, all of the characters themselves, their chemistry together, the performances, I thought was very, very solid. And because of that, that really anchors this movie, because the third act is bad, it's rushed, there's multiple issues with it. Galactus jobs out and becomes a jobber in the third act, and same with Shala Balls throughout the entire movie, basically dang near, and so that really brought the movie down. But overall, it's a progress, okay? This is progress, not perfection, you know what I'm saying? But no no pun intended, this is a first step. You know what I'm saying? Actually, yeah, pun intended. This is a first step in the right direction going forward. It's just a shame that we only have one more movie before, Avengers Doomsday that's going to have nothing to do with Doomsday or the multiverse plotline at all. So we're just going to have to go from this movie directly into the Doomsday story with a Spider-Man grounded movie in between, which again, I don't know how Spider-Man again manages to have multiple other characters in the movie like Hulk and Punisher and whoever Sadie Sink is playing, and I think Zendaya is returning as MJ. Way too many characters in there, but that's a discussion for another day. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it had multiple really good to even great things about it, and it had a few things that I thought were very bad. Overall, it was improvement. I would give it a 7 to 7.5 out of 10. It was a pretty solid movie that was extremely close to genuinely being absolutely fantastic. You know what I'm saying? So let me know what you thought about Fantastic Four in the comment sections below. And as always, I thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Peace out and one love.